I don't know if y'all are familiar with a creator named Mallory. Her twin daughters have a rare and aggressive form of leukemia. And a lot of her content is about funding childhood cancer research and treatment. I really want to highlight her content right now in particular because we found out this past week that a pediatric brain cancer group is going to lose their federal funding. And there's also a story that came out in Oncology Live about the devastating impact on cancer research and treatment that is completely voluntarily inflicted on the scientific community, on the medical community, on the American people by the Trump regime, by CDC policies, NIH cuts. There's so many ways.
I walked out of a church this morning in tears. I came in with one of my posters and I said, look, I need help fundraising. This is not political and it's not self-promotion. I just need help spreading awareness. You know what they did? They handed me back my poster and said they could not share, but that they would like to pray with me. And I said that I lost my faith in religion a long time ago, and that while I welcomed them to go ahead and pray for my babies, I told them that it wasn't going to be enough. I need more than thoughts and prayers. I need policy and change. And when I tell you that the moment I mentioned that our government was the one responsible for cutting our cancer research funding for all children, you could feel the shift in the room. I don't understand why people are making this political, because it absolutely should not be political. I'm just talking about saving children's lives. You know, what this really could happen to anybody. God.
We could talk about how in many ways MAGA Christians are in a death cult. We could talk about how the same people that say we should cut government programs because it's the church that's meant to care for people are members of churches that refuse to care for people, right? They were willing to pray for her and her daughters. They're not willing to support them financially, and they're definitely not willing to vote for policy or regime change that would save the lives of countless people with cancer. But they'll pray for you. They'll pray for you. I'd like to read real quick a little bit from a piece from Oncology Live. It's entitled "Federal Funding Cuts Spark Concern Over Future of Cancer Research and Care in the United States." It's dated August 27th. With research institutions facing widespread layoffs and hiring freezes following deep cuts to federal funding for health agencies such as the NIH and the National Cancer Institute, concerns about the long-term consequences for oncology research programs and biomedical progress in the U.S. are escalating. These changes are already being felt across academic centers, clinical trial infrastructure, and cancer research programs. Since taking office in January 2025, the regime has taken several steps to reduce workforce and budget allocations for the Department of Health and Human Services. That's been done by Trump through executive orders and also through RFK Jr. restructuring. Then in February, the NIH announced a 15% cap on grants for indirect costs. That's important funding that they've taken away from infrastructure and maintenance. Significantly reduced the amount of funding that research institutions, universities are getting for public health and medical research. Estimates from the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee suggest that as much as $2.7 billion in research grants were cut from the NIH during the first 3 months of 2025 alone. And findings from recent analyses have showed that NIH grant rejections have more than doubled, with more than 2,500 applications denied to date. A lot of that has to do with this new requirement that there not be woke language in your grants. I've talked about this before, like the AI that they use scans for words like trans, which then means people get their grants rejected for having words like transdermal, transgenic, transfer in them. An additional report from the Association of American Medical Colleges said that the NIH had terminated 777 grants as of May 5th, which accounts for $1.9 billion in medical research. That funding is just lost. Sweeping workforce reductions have also followed these budgetary decisions. On March 25th, RFK Jr. announced he was terminating 10,000 employees, including 1,000 from the NIH. 20% of those were later identified as errors. Additionally, layoffs in May affected 250 more NIH employees, and 50 of those were staff at the National Cancer Institute. This is not about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, y'all. This is necessary cancer research. RFK Jr. and Health and Human Services fiscal year 2026 budget was also released, which outlines 40% reductions in NIH funding. So despite assurances from Health and Human Services and RFK that these cuts are not going to compromise operations at the HHS, several scientists at the National Cancer Institute have reported delays in procuring essential supplies due to staffing cuts and policy changes. Another thing we're seeing is that members of the National Institute of Health are transitioning out of government jobs and into private industry because they're not sure what's going to happen. They're not sure about the future of their position doing NIH research. There's anxiety because there's uncertainty. It's scary, especially for those with large research portfolios and ongoing research. Historically, the U.S. has been a global leader in oncology research, supported by substantial federal investments in biomedical science. All of that infrastructure is now in flux, and scientists are worried about a slowdown in progress across cancer biology, translational research, and therapeutic development, particularly given the escalating costs of conducting trials domestically. Equity-focused research is also at risk. Some researchers have been able to pivot their focus away from race-based investigations, because you can't use anything that sounds like DEI or wokeness to the Trump regime, to try and focus on socioeconomic and environmental drivers of disparities in cancer rates and treatment. Other researchers have faced greater scrutiny and decreased support. Jumping down to the end of the article, we have had in the U.S. for decades clear-cut paths for academic researchers to obtain funding. This is an awakening moment. Individuals must now think carefully about how to ensure the sustainability of their programs. If you're pursuing high-impact science that is focused on benefiting patients, there are still many avenues for success. We have a brilliant scientific community in the U.S., and this community must keep moving forward with helping humankind as our North Star. I mean, we could talk about the brain drain in the U.S., right? Cutting funding for research causes scientists to go to other countries where that research is still well funded. It should be repeated constantly. This regime is not making America great again. They are regressing us. They are taking us backward. Cutting cancer research does not make America great. Setting our scientific research back decades, setting cures back decades, actively creating a situation in which more and more Americans will die from cancer. That is not making us great, y'all. It's nonsensical. It's not a political issue. It doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum. You are touched by cancer in this country. Somebody you love will have died from cancer in this country. Somebody that you love will have, gone through cancer treatment and had a good outcome and is now in remission, is now cured, is now, living their life. Because of federally funded research, people are surviving cancer. Do you not understand that cutting that research means that other people who also deserve to have good treatment and good outcomes will be denied that? It doesn't matter who you voted for. It should be abundantly clear to everybody that MAGA is making us worse. They're wrecking everything that gives us any quality of life. They're wrecking everything in this country. The goal is just to inflict suffering while they grift and funnel money up to the super wealthy. The billionaires don't need our tax dollars. They're getting a giant tax break. They're already the most obscenely rich people in the world. Why do they need a tax break? Why do we need our cancer research being taken away from us so that billionaires can slap some more money on their giant pile of gold? Is this what we want for this country? Is this the kind of society that we want to live in? Or do we want to do something about it?